What's up, guys? I'm DK, and you're watching Pro Wrestling What If, the series where I look at the different what if scenarios as terms of the world that we call professional wrestling. Sid Vicious, Psycho Sid, or in this case, Sid Justice, had made his WWE/F debut in the summer of 1991. He would serve as the special guest referee in the 3-on-2 handicap match with Hulk Hogan and Ultimate Warrior against the Triangle of Terror at Summerslam of 1991. Shortly after, Sid would unfortunately suffer an injury that would sideline him for a few months, causing him to miss that year's Survivor Series and this Tuesday in Texas pay-per-view events. Sid would return back in time for the Royal Rumble 1992 event, where he would compete in the Royal Rumble match that was for the vacant WWE/F Championship. This would eventually lead to a main event match at WrestleMania VIII between Sid Justice and Hulk Hogan, which would see Hulk Hogan win via disqualification due to interference from Papa Shango, which then would see the return of the Ultimate Warrior for the first time since SummerSlam 1991, coming to the aid of Hulk Hogan. Sid Justice would then begin a feud with the Ultimate Warrior on numerous house show events, but Sid had quit the WWE/F before the feud really kicked off. Now, unfortunately, Sid did pass away a few weeks ago after a long battle with cancer, in which, had I not released the Chris Jericho What If video and the Vince McMahon Higher Power video the last couple of weeks due to it being filmed, edited, and uploaded prior to Sid's death, I definitely would have had this episode out much sooner, and I felt this was kind of one of the big what ifs as terms to the career of Sid. So for today's episode, we're going to be talking about what if Sid Justice didn't leave WWE/F in 1992. And so for this, I'm going to be going through each WWE pay-per-view for the next year and determining what would happen with Sid Justice had he not left the company in 1992. And if you end up enjoying this video, don't forget to hit that like button, share this to all your friends, subscribe, and press the notification bell for when future episodes get released, and leave a comment down below about today's topic or suggesting a future topic for an episode of Pro Wrestling What If. So starting off with SummerSlam 1992, I think that Sid Justice would challenge the Macho Man Randy Savage for the WWE/F Championship. Now, as we all know, Sid Justice, right after WrestleMania VIII, had started a feud with the Ultimate Warrior. And of course, the feud barely kicked off, as I mentioned, due to Sid quitting the company shortly afterwards. It was also noted that prior to WrestleMania VIII, Sid Justice had failed a drug test and was expected to serve a suspension. So I feel like even if Sid stayed in the WWE/F at around this time and I guess wouldn't wrestle the Ultimate Warrior, he would serve that suspension. So with Sid Justice serving his suspension, this would still abruptly end the feud with the Ultimate Warrior and force Warrior to go into that feud with Papa Shango. And so I feel after Sid had served his suspension, he would be placed right back into the WWE/F Championship scene, especially with guys like Hulk Hogan not being there at this point. And so if we had Sid, I don't think that we would have that face versus face match at SummerSlam 92 between the Ultimate Warrior and the Macho Man Randy Savage, and that Ultimate Warrior would probably have a blow-off match with Papa Shango at the event. And even though Ric Flair was a part of SummerSlam 1992, causing a distraction in the Warrior and Savage match, the reason that he didn't wrestle at the event was that he was being punished for blading during the WrestleMania VIII match with Randy Savage. And so if we had a big enough star like Sid Justice at this time, he would fit the role as a heel going into the match with Randy Savage, and you could still have Ric Flair and Mr. Perfect cause an interference in the match, and thus for this match, I would actually think that Sid Justice would become the brand new WWE/F champion at SummerSlam 1992. And just like the real timeline, this match wouldn't be the main event because we had the British Bulldog versus Bret Hart Intercontinental Championship match be the main event, since it was at Wembley Stadium in London, England. The crowd would be sent home happy with one of their own, being British Bulldog, walking out as the champion to end off the night. For Survivor Series 1992, I think we would still get that same tag team match of Mr. Perfect Perfect and Randy Savage against Ric Flair and Razor Ramon, but in this case, Razor Ramon would be switched with Sid Justice. Now, I think the ending of that SummerSlam 1992 match between Sid Justice and Randy Savage would then cause for this tag team match to happen because of Ric Flair's interference. And originally scheduled for that tag team match, it was supposed to be the Ultimate Maniacs of Ultimate Warrior and Randy Savage against Ric Flair and Razor Ramon. However, of course, Warrior being Warrior was let go by the WWE/F, thus causing the company to call an audible and having Mr. Perfect go from being a heel to turning babyface to fill the void. And when it comes to Razor Ramon's position as terms to this pay-per-view, he probably would be in some sort of singles match or in some sort of Survivor Series tag team match. And as terms to the real timeline with the Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart match, that match would still happen, except it wouldn't be for the WWE/F Championship, it would be for the Intercontinental Championship, because if you guys remember, after British Bulldog had won the title from Bret the Hitman Hart at SummerSlam, he did drop it to the Heartbreak Kid Shawn Michaels, which would lead to British Bulldog's departure because of the steroid allegations. It would almost act as if this is Bret Hart's rematch clause from SummerSlam 1992, and of course around this time, Bret Hart was originally the WWE/F champion by taking off of Ric Flair, who had won the title from Randy Savage shortly after that SummerSlam 92 event, but with Sid Justice around, I don't think that WWE/F would have used Ric Flair to take the title off of Randy Savage so quickly due to Randy Savage's personal life issues. Shawn Michaels would retain the Intercontinental Championship, and this new tag team match involving Sid Justice would actually be the main event of the show, instead of the Bret Hart-Shawn Michaels match, in which, just like the real timeline, Mr. Perfect and Randy Savage would win the match against Ric Flair and Sid Justice, the 1993 Royal Rumble event, which I see the Macho Man Randy Savage face off against Sid Justice for the WWE Championship. Now, of course, with Randy Savage and Mr. Perfect winning that tag team match, Randy Savage would once again set his sights on getting another shot at the WWE/F Championship. And so, of course, because at this point, Vince McMahon is eyeing on the new generation era, that most likely Randy Savage would not win this match and that Sid Justice would retain the WWE/F Championship. Or option B, a realistic option for that matter, Sid Justice would defend the title at Royal Rumble 1993 against The Undertaker. Undertaker throughout 1992 was feuding with clients of Harvey Whippleman, including having a match at SummerSlam against Kamala, and would have a coffin match against Kamala at Survivor Series that year. Prior to WrestleMania VIII, Sid Justice had become a client of Harvey Whippleman, which would play right into the storyline that Undertaker was involved with. Even having Sid Justice retain the title in this match due to interference from the debut of Harvey Whippleman's newest client, Giant Gonzalez, something that had happened in the real timeline during the Royal Rumble match and would unfortunately still lead up to that horrendous match between Undertaker and Giant Gonzalez at WrestleMania IX. And at this point, Randy Savage was slowly moving into that commentating role instead of being an active in-ring competitor. And in the real timeline, as terms to the Royal Rumble match, Yokozuna had won the match by last eliminating Randy Savage, but I think in this particular case, Yokozuna wouldn't win the Royal Rumble, and that the Royal Rumble winner in this particular time is Bret the Hitman Hart. I think this would definitely make sense since he had just finished off an Intercontinental Championship feud with the Heartbreak Kid Shawn Michaels by losing that match at Survivor Series 1992, and now he could officially set its sights on the WWE/F Championship as the winner of the 1993 Royal Rumble. And the final pay-per-view for this one-year span is WrestleMania IX, which we would see the 1993 Royal Rumble winner Bret the Hitman Hart go up against Sid Justice for the WWE Championship. Now, of course, in the real timeline, we did see Bret Hart go up against Yokozuna, in which Bret Hart was the WWE/F champion and Yokozuna was the Royal Rumble winner. But I feel in a way that if Sid Justice had stayed, that there wouldn't have been a chance of Yokozuna taking that place of the monster heel main event spot, in which in this match, I do think that Bret Hart would win the WWE WWE/F Championship for the first time by defeating Sid Justice. And the question you're probably wondering is, does the shenanigans involving Hulk Hogan still happen at the end of this match? In which technically, if the ending was that Sid Justice were to retain the championship, I could see a world where they still have that finish of Hulk Hogan in basically seconds capture the WWE/F Championship. But I think if we go the route that I mentioned of Bret Hart winning his first world championship in this match, that I believe we actually would avoid that whole thing involving Hulk Hogan screwing up the end of WrestleMania 9, and that people would probably regard WrestleMania 9 as not exactly such a bad event overall. And in the real timeline, shortly after WrestleMania 9, Sid Justice, now going back to the name Sid Vicious, would sign with World Championship Wrestling. So that kind of begs the question, does Sid end his contract right here with WWE/F to go back to WCW, or does he stay after this run?